Hello and welcome to my hometown Bonn. My name is Daniel. I'm the founder of Bonn City Tours, and today we're going to have a little special tour. I'm going to show you a little walk, about 50 minutes through the beautiful cherry blossom here in Bonn. And without further ado, I would say let's start our walk slowly, and you can enjoy the pictures while I will give you some stories about how did the cherry blossom come to Bonn, what is the story of this cute city quarter, and why did this become such a public and very popular event in Bonn. Without further ado, let's start our little walk. So we will have to dodge a lot of people and bicycles today. But I can tell you, we're filming this on a Tuesday. I don't want to say early in the morning, but in the morning. And compared to Saturday and Sunday, you would have to imagine we would have to use our elbows to get straight through the streets, because it's such a popular event, especially because in the last 2 years of COVID, it was extremely restricted to enter this area. I think it was in 2020 when it was the most restricted. You could only enter the city quarter, and really police and official department was controlling this, if you were living here in the city quarter. The good thing about Bonn is, as a small city with about 330,000 people, everybody knows somebody who lives here, so you always could have a reason to enter this quarter here. This year we're also quite lucky with our filming, because if you remember our video from last year, we have been here still in winter jackets. It's much warmer. You can really say that the rain and the cold made it possible that the cherry blossom was prolonged, and we are now, how to say it, in the full season of it. So there are always 3 steps: the early blossoming, now the main blossom, and then the last step when the cherry blossoming is starting to fall down.
Darf ich auch ein paar Fotos machen?
So we were going to make a stop in like 50 meters at the corner, because right now it's a bit noisy here. We can also have a nice shop there to the next street of the cherry blossom. It's, how to say it, it's only 2 streets, but they are like very, very long here, and they're almost completely covered with cherry blossom trees. And here at the corner you will see how long the streets are actually going, and also about the architecture here, which makes the combination so beautiful. Yeah, here we have it. In that direction, the nice view. So you get an impression how long these streets are, fully covered with the cherry trees. And this is also at the end of the street where we're going to end in our video, because we're going to do some slalom walking through both streets here, so you get an impression of both streets. I can also tell you something about the architecture here, which you see around us. In German we call this Gründerzeit Architektur, the foundation architecture. I won't throw too many dates at you today, but that's the one you will get. 1871 is the year in the German, like the Franco-Prussian War, where Germany is united, and suddenly you have a huge economical boom in Germany, and a lot of people managed to rise up into the middle class. So this year was historically the middle class quarter. Many craftsmen or other people were living here. Today it's one of the most popular city quarters, because most students do live here. And this also explains why we have more than 40 pubs here. Without further ado, I want to go with you, continue the walk into the next street, because there I want to show you some houses to explain you this beautiful architecture a bit more detailed. Let's go. So why is this quarter today so popular? You have to imagine we had a huge reform in Bonn in the 70s. They decided to remove a lot of cars from the city center directly, also some tram lines from the city center. Excuse me. And here they decided to remove dodging the next car. Here in the 70s they decided that the cars are not allowed to go into both directions in all the streets anymore. They made a lot of streets one-way driving. They slowed down the pace of the cars from 50 to 30. They opened up, as you can see on the ground, the cobblestones here, which I can tell you, if you drive your car here, it's a real pain to drive. It's like you really feel that they want to disincentivize you to drive here with a car. If you make your driving license in Bonn in many parts, you learn first to park, then you learn to drive, especially in streets like this here. So what did they do in the 70s? They decided to upgrade the pedestrian zones, left and right, which is opening, as you can see, a lot of space for cafes, gastronomia and small shops. And yeah, so let's make a little walk into one of the side streets, because I want to talk to you about the architecture here. Yeah, we can maybe have a shot in this direction so you get an impression how long the street is. And we will end also this street, but I want to show you both cherry blossom streets, so we'll do a little slalom. The side street is right now very empty, but it's the architecture why we're visiting it, so you know the background story. Just follow me. So let's make a little stop here and talk about the architecture here. Today I'm a personal huge fan of this kind of architecture. It's my favorite one. Many people do think so here in Bonn. Today it looks very expensive, and I can tell you it is, because it all has to be redone by professional craftsmen, this style. But originally, 150 years ago, it was affordable for the middle class. And how is this possible? You see in the back one of the houses, the brickstones there. So this is actually how these houses were originally built. So a standardized, mass-produced way. But you could choose for many houses at the front how the front looking will be. So it's basically just decorated on the front. You could pick which symbols, which styles do you want. You'll recognize a lot of historical, like little statues, Greek temple triangles. This is because the people here, it's an ideological fight against the nobility, want to show, look, we as citizens have managed to rise up in the middle class, in the upper middle class, because we did study, we do work, and not because we inherit the right land. So this is already here. They're playing with this idea at the same style. It's a bit copying the castles of the lords who are ruling before in Europe. Down the street you see some green trees. This is how the cherry blossom in the main street will look probably in 2 weeks. So here the cherry blossom was a bit earlier. So you would say on the first look nothing special, but the magic is really here 2 or 3 weeks in April. Let's continue our walk. So we're turning now into the Heerstraße, which means in German like the military road, because Bonn is one of the oldest cities of Germany. We are an old Roman colony town, a fortress city of the Roman army. We're still battling with our neighbor cities, who's actually older. We don't really tell by exact the year, but it's around 2000 years old. Let's try to make a stop here without cars. So what you can see now is the second street. In this direction a bit, but definitely more into the other direction, which we will see in some seconds. And this is probably the picture you know from the internet, most famously here in the cherry blossom, and it's full blossoming here. What you will also see are many Roman statues, like copies of sculptures, which is a very cool idea. It's showing like the connection of Bonn to the Roman history, and it's also slowing down the cars a lot. So you see the cobblestones here, you have to navigate around it, so this is all slowing down the traffic here in this quarter. Let's continue our walk down the street, and then I will give you the reasons why did they put the cherry blossom here in Bonn in the 70s. Let's go. So actually these cherry blossom trees here are not local ones. When they decided in the 70s that they want to upgrade all the pedestrian zones here and to add some trees, they took first a German tree, but there was a lot of bacteria. Many trees got ill and then they died. So they were a bit in a rush and they decided, why don't we take the Japanese cherry tree, the Sakura. This is a tree which is usually growing quite fast. In some years it can be already up, and they don't get so old, but this was basically the fastest and best solution they thought of. And then secondly, they forgot to cut some of these trees according to German regulations, so trucks and buses can properly pass here. And this led to the fact that the rooftops of the cherry trees grew together, which makes this beautiful effect here. So these are already the first two reasons, and the important one is 2011, I think it was the date where somebody posted in this Facebook group 1,000 things you have to do before you die. This picture here of the street, and since then we're seeing a huge touristic explosion here in Bonn every year. If I remember the date correctly, before COVID, only alone from Japan, around 80,000 bookings we did have in spring times for the cherry blossom here. Yeah. So, as you can imagine, today, though we're already dodging cars and people, it's still not really full. It's much fuller during the weekends. Not all locals do like this, to be honest. There are some people who don't like the Trubel, like the mass trouble here, the mass touristic event. It's hard to debate with this, partially because 40 pubs are here, this so-called Altstadt. Here are a lot of students living. Here's very often a lot of nightlife, so it's always a full, crowded and noisy quarter. And also I want to remind you that our Carnival main celebration is also here in Bonn. It's like a huge event as well, so it's hard to argue why these 2 weeks are the problem now. Some people even threatened to put some nails into the trees, and they painted them like that they want to destroy the trees to basically end this touristic mass event here. This did not happen, so the trees are still existing today. But you see that some trees got destroyed, like this here one for example, because when they were renewing the canalization, how to explain this in English? The roots are have very fine roots down in the earth with bacteria which is supporting the roots, and these were cut during the excavation, and therefore the trees at some point died. But they're already planting new ones, so really they don't take longer than 8 years until they're up again, but they don't live so long, around 40 years. And we will go now as the next one through another side street to end with you at the panorama view of the Breite Straße again, and there will explain you basically why this core here is called the Old Town, but it's actually not. It's actually another part of the city. Let's go. So we're entering the broad street, the Breite Straße again, and we'll do a beautiful 360 camera view for you, so you have a little orientation. If you cannot come to Bonn this year or next year, we'll also mention the names for you: Breite Straße, Heerstraße is the parallel street if you want to follow it on Google Maps. So when people in Bonn here, the Bonner people, when they talk about the Altstadt, they talk exactly about this district here, which is confusing because in German it means Old Town, and I can tell you this is not the historical Old Town of Bonn. If you remember, 1871 the first houses were really built here. That's comparatively to the 2000 years history of Bonn a very short time period. It's basically a marketing gag from the pub owners in the 70s who decided that they want somehow to make marketing for it, and everybody in Germany remembers Düsseldorf, Altstadt, the Old Town, that this is the pub district. And this marketing gag was successfully done because most locals call this today the Old Town, like in Düsseldorf. Let's continue our walk a bit here. So our recommendation is, if you want to upgrade your Instagram portfolio, for example, come early in the morning. It's already in springtime, bright. The sun is already up at 6 in the morning or at 6:30, and the streets are very, very empty, so you can do peacefully your pictures here. On the weekends, of course, you have to expect that there are going to be a lot of people. You might ask yourself, where does the name Bonn comes from? I'm mentioning the Roman origins of the city a lot. It's nothing Roman and also nothing Germanic. Bonn has a Celtic name origin because 2000 years ago here was like the mix area between Celtic and Germanic culture. For example, you have still Lisbon with a Bonn ending, which means in Celtic something like people living in a valley or simply valley. Yeah, and there we have also a very famous picture of the cherry blossom. If we sparked your interest with this tour, you're highly welcome to visit Bonn or also to come one of our tours. In the cherry blossom time, we very often include this in our tours, or you can also have private tours here for booking. Thanks for your attention. I hope I could spark your interest in my little hometown Bonn, and I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you.